Hello and welcome to 24 panels per second. This is the comic book and TV film show from the Comic Crush. I am your host, Paul, as always. Today we are going to be talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And it seems only just that brought on a wizard of our own, a man who works magic with his film reviews. You can't actually see him at the moment, but I can see him, and he's doing some amazing stuff. Uh, Say hello, everyone. It's Mr. Rob Deb. Hello.
Hello.
Just a quick heads up before we get started. This is, as I said, the comic book, movie, and TV show from the Comic Crush. You can follow the Comic Crush at the Comic Crush right there. You can follow me at Comic Crush Paul. You can follow Rob at Rob Deb, all on Twitter, on Instagram, all the same, except for Rob. Rob is at Rob K Deb on Insta. You can also check out our Patreon and our web store. Why is it important for you to do that? Quite simply because that's how the website earns money to keep going. So please do that. You'll be able to find some comics on there: Marvel comics, DC, Batman, Doctor Strange, all kinds of stuff is on the website with new stuff going up nearly every week. So do check all that stuff out. There will be links in the description below. As I say, that does help me keep going with this fine channel. Now, normally I would have been joined by Liz for a bit of the old Marvel, but not today. Liz is at a wedding, I believe.
Variant Liz.
Yeah, you are variant. Well, in fact, you're not only variant Liz, but you're variant Nikki, because Nikki was going to be on this as advertised on Twitter recently. However, she had something come up, so she couldn't do it. And Rob, you have very kindly filled in, so thank you so much for doing that.
Not a problem at all.
Double dose of Deb this week because you were on the Jurassic World podcast just a couple of days back.
I am. My review should be up by the time you're reading this. And me and Paul do have quite different views of it. So if you haven't watched the Jurassic World Dominion talk on the Genre Pod, do check that out after this one.
Yeah, that's on the Real Crush, which is our non-comic book, the Genre Pod, as Rob says, so succinctly puts it, and I just babble on and say it's the non-comic book movie and TV podcast. But we're here to talk about something that is definitely based very much in comics. Doctor Strange 2, also known as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Rob, before we get sort of really rolling into it, were you a big fan of Doctor Strange comics?
I was. I've always been a bit of a sucker. I've got to say, of the two, probably most explained by the amalgam character Doctor Strange Fate.
Yes.
I erred more towards Doctor Fate.
Right.
But I've always been a fan of DC. Have tended to do the Mystic more. But the J.M. DeMatteis runs of Doctor Strange particularly stick on my mind. And I've always liked the more supernatural characters. I've always had more of a fondness for them. So, I've read most of his stuff, particularly the Midnight Suns era, which is a real hard call because there's a lot of people just eschew that completely.
Right.
But for me, I think the various incarnations of Strange have still kept a very human character to them.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
Yeah, and kind of, I only really know him from the original. Well, I mean, obviously, I knew there were Doctor Strange comics, and yes, I'd read one or two. I only really knew him from the movie. That came out in 2016. I think
it's just called Doctor Strange, and if anything, I remember Benedict Cumberbatch almost preempting criticism to my mind by just going, "This is a superhero origin movie."
Yeah,
not saying there was anything good or anything bad with it, just making it as a very flat statement.
Yeah, which is kind of important these days for people to kind of clarify with
Yeah.
themselves, whether or not they're going to get an origin or whether or not they're going to be jumped straight in at a la
Yeah.
Spider-Man, or a la the Tom Holland incarnation of Spider-Man. Funny enough, I would have loved Liz to have been on this one because I think our very first Marvel podcast was
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, so it's a shame she's not here, but you know, other appointments heralded. And it's interesting to kind of come full circle after so long, because we're now 6 years out from the original Doctor Strange. It's a long time to wait for a sequel.
Well, I mean, it
in
doesn't
the modern
really
world.
Yeah, but we have had quite a lot of Strange. I mean, it's the thing about the Marvel Universe is that this is now arguably his 5th Doctor Strange appearance.
Sure.
He's pretty crucial to the end of the phases in terms of, you know, Infinity War and Endgame. He has played both major roles in that. Ragnarok's a cameo, really, but we've had a lot of Strange.
Yeah.
Sorry. We've not had a lot of Stephen.
No, you do get more of that in this film. I mean, I went into this a bit trepidatious.
Sure.
Just because, having watched No Way Home, you know, I aired my feelings quite vocally on that podcast that we did a few months back. I felt that as enjoyable as that experience was, and you know, it took someone else to nail the feeling for me. Maybe I didn't put it as simply as I wanted, but our mutual friend Owen Michael Johnson, we were having a sort of text exchange one night. I'm sure he won't mind me revealing this. But we were talking about things like Ghostbusters Afterlife, The Matrix Resurrections, Spider-Man No Way Home. And he said, you know, now it just feels like we're watching movies about other movies. And that then kind of really brought home the feeling for me that No Way Home created. It is enjoyable as it is. You are watching a kind of remix, and yes, we live in a nostalgia / remix culture. That is the currency that seems to have, you know, it's intercontextuality has more currency now than ever. I think a lot of that is to do with the comfort that the old things gave us.
Yeah.
Or not. I mean, it's interesting to see people's opinions change when after they've watched things that are clearly utter shite. And then, it's 30 years after I watched that piece of utter shite. It's not utter shite anymore. It's one of the best things ever.
What, like Blade Runner?
Well, hold on a minute.
Well, I mean, if you
don't go there, Rob.
Statements like that,
don't go there.
You've thrown out this statement. What, you mean like John Carpenter's The Thing? Do you mean like Shawshank Redemption? I mean,
I think those things were all ignored classics that I believe you're talking about there at the time.
Who's to say?
Pretty tough to ignore superhero movies.
I think it's very hard to ignore superhero media.
Right.
In that, they make great covers. It's easy to put a still up. People get spectacle in a copy of Empire. It's not difficult. It's very hard to just put a picture of a kitchen sink drama on your front cover.
True.
I love Peter Mullen, but if you stick up a picture of Peter Mullen on your cover, unless it's GQ Man of the Year directing thing, right? It's not going to sell as much copies as Peter Mullen in a domino mask going, "The Silver Avenger is back again. Find out this latest phase."
Very true.
Mullen for the MCU. You know, it's this that's what happens. Genre makes great icons. It makes great images. It's great to show a trailer on BBC Breakfast. You know, ask the actress about his shoes. Ask Chris Hemsworth about his diet. These are very, you know,
Yeah.
The formula for superhero films isn't as formulaic as the packaging of action movies.
I mean, I wouldn't think that you or I need to ask Chris Hemsworth about his diet, really, Rob, since it's the one that we're clearly following, as I'm sure the audience can tell just by looking at us.
Well, I know that I had been told a certain thing. He was on the cover of Men's Health,
right,
in a place I was working. I just had a little phone call which basically told me that I was never going to be an Avenger. I didn't even bother reading the article. I just looked at the front cover and I cried for a minute and a half.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you, but I'm laughing at the kind of. Yeah, I mean, it is always a painful moment
of that situation.
But,
yeah.
However, that presents an interesting thing with Doctor Strange, because if you could, find a way via magic to enter that arena, surely you would.
Right, while we're on physicality, why is there a martial arts fight in the middle of it in a corridor between two of the greatest magical warriors of the world, Mordo and Strange? Just get all capoeira and half the Illuminati are dead. Why then?
Were they not taught some martial arts as part of their training at
if I've been taught, if I've been taught martial arts and I have a gun and there's a man in front of me and reality is at stake and I have a gun, of the two things I would use the gun.
Yeah. Well, this is it, Rob. I think this is why you're always looking for a shortcut. Can I say, I've got to, speaking of appearances, I've got to congratulate you on the hair this evening.
Thank you.
That is beautiful. Partly Elvis meets Doctor Strange.
Because Elvis, that's exactly what I've gone for. Because Elvis, as we all know, was played by Bruce Campbell in the classic Bubba Hotep.
Yeah. We've gone way off track already.
This was my sort of nod to the Raimi-verse of this film, which is rife and lovely.
Mm. And, also along those lines, I've got to say your hair looks a lot more realistic than Benedict Cumberbatch's did in certain scenes in this film. So I like this kind of repositioning of Doctor Strange as the sort of kindly uncle / daddy of the MCU, who seems to be taking in wayward teenagers in trouble and setting them straight on the course in their life. I actually like that this sort of new thing they seem to have positioned him into.
It's circumstance, but he's having to look at what's happened, and he's got a lot of. I mean, my Uncle Pappy once told me, the second best mistake to learn from is someone else's. And he's got nothing else but watching his mistakes in other realities throughout this.
That's interesting. That is interesting because he becomes at once the kind of savior and becomes the protagonist and the antagonist in the movie, which is kind of an interesting thing to do in a film like this, but at the same time it's also entirely within the kind of expectations of the multiverse that you face up against yourself. We obviously we've seen it in Spider-Man. We've seen it in movies like The One. I don't know if you remember that, Jet Li. That's the one I always go back to for multiverse
I know
stuff.
the premise. I remember the premise of it, but I haven't seen it. But again,
it's a terrific little B movie.
All at once is again something about where multiversal self,
which you wrote a terrific review of on the Comic Crush, which you can take a look at now. If you head over to the website, but don't head there just yet. Watch this video first. I kind of like this idea of people facing off against themselves, but also in this, he faces off against, Wanda,
Yeah.
who still kind of dealing with this incredible grief, but also I feel kind of hiding in shame over the things she's done. And in that shame, instead of kind of owning it and facing it, she just gets worse.
I think that's a thing that you often see in life, though, is that people double down into a bizarre, intense denial, which everyone else can see. But then that is a reaction. I also want to state before we continue, as someone who hasn't seen any of WandaVision,
right? Okay.
I felt that I knew enough watching this film.
That is interesting because I mean, Liz has picked up on this where she said, Disney Plus did or Marvel Disney did say kind of no, you won't need to watch any of these shows to get the films, but you very much increasingly do.
I think you get more.
Yeah.
I think I'd have got more. I knew Vision was gone because I know Vision's dead. Now, let me put it this way. The last film I saw, right, if I know absolutely nothing of anything else, Vision died.
Yeah.
Right? So I know that her partner's dead. Now, whatever's happened in WandaVision, as I come into this film, her partner's dead.
Completely. And I think that's a successful bit of writing there.
Yeah.
Also, it's one of the things that I think marks this film out, because what you clearly have in Raimi and the writers of the movie are people who understand A, structure.
Yeah.
B, how to keep a film a certain length and give you all the information you need. The film was 2 hours, 6 minutes in comparison to the usual Marvel running time, which is much longer. They also understand how to, or Raimi understands how to transition from one moment to another, from one shot to another, from one scene to another, better than I think I've seen since the Russos stepped up and did Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
He understands kind of a tightness of script. And then you look at something as flabby and kind of messy as No Way Home, which I'm sure you saw.
No,
you didn't. Okay.
No,
as I said at the beginning, it's a fun movie to watch.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it
by
looks
God,
that, but
it's not.
To be frank, I was still. I'll just make it very brief for viewers watching.
Please.
I think the easiest way to describe my life, until very recently, really Easter, was as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
And we'll just draw a line under there. So anything before April, theatrically, was just not happening.
Yeah, fair enough. Would you? I understand. I completely understand that caution. And don't blame anyone for exercising that caution.
No, I just think that's the for viewers out there going, what's going
on? And also, I think that this actually highlights part of the problem with the kind of cultural omnipresence of Marvel now.
Yeah.
Of Marvel movies, at least. There is this complete lack of understanding when people don't go and see them. I have a pal, a new friend who I'm kind of in touch with at the moment, who doesn't really do adaptations. She likes comics, but she doesn't do adaptations. And I find that kind of fascinating in one stage, because the Marvel things aren't really adaptations. They're adaptation of character, but not necessarily of storyline. I think they're kind of
I mean, it's more about IP rather than a story.
And it very much is its own 616.
Oh, very much.
We do get stated in this movie that the universe we're looking at, The Marvel
Yeah.
Universe, the MCU as we know it, is the 616. And a lot of people have been up in arms about that. Even, I think, Iman Vellani, who's so wonderful as Miss Marvel, even she has kind of said, I don't think it's the 616. But it is. It's just the MCU's version of the 616. And
well, let me put it this way. The easiest way to get around that is its definition is coming from whom? Let's look at the fact that once the Earth was the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Then the sun was the center of the universe. Now we know that we're in a galaxy surrounded by loads of other galaxies, and we have no concept of a center.
Yeah.
Now, you apply that to the idea of giving anything a 616. Says who? Says what? From whom?
Yeah, sure.
So,
that's fair. Yeah.
It's a purely semantic statement. I mean, that's why I use that. I mean, I'm sure there could be another reality that calls itself 616. So I don't think it's something to, even within its own narrative. You know, I mean, DC have been doing multiverse front and center more for years.
Yeah.
Marvel really, if anything, tried to avoid.
You're very true. Very true. They've
really tried to avoid alternate universes until the Ultimates, which really is the blueprint for the MCU, if anything.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I was talking
and that in turn got folded into the 616. I mean,
to its detriment, I feel, because I think the Ultimates was a much more cohesive opportunity to build something.
Yeah,
on a very straight
I mean,
set
that's
of thematic lines and rules.
We get into a whole other.
And the thing is that people bend towards order; they don't bend towards chaos. Although the universe bends towards chaos, I think people ultimately bend towards order. Although, maybe I think that kind of view might be a bit shaken.
Well, I mean, I think people strive to make sense of their lives, and that will always create a narrative. But without chaos, there is no art.
Very true.
Chaos is creativity. How you give it form to be able to build and make something more sophisticated and create more art and permutations or whatever from it is another thing. That's what this film does deal with. I mean, the Illuminati are wandering around with Ultrons. Do you really want to have that world?
Well, I guess like any tool, it depends on how you use it, right? I mean,
again, says who? These five guys, and like one lady they found with a shield, and
two ladies.
I was going to go, and another lady who's able to be there from another planet, and will probably just go, I'm off.
I mean, we've got to talk about that before we kind of get into which is the sequence of the film, the one that everyone was waiting for. And that takes me back to the thing that Owen had said, which is movies about other movies, because very much partly what this film did, and I think wonderfully so, was it made a movie about movies that were never made but were on everyone's wish list. So you had John Krasinski, the ultimate fan cast at the moment for Mr. Fantastic. You had the X-Men 92 version of Professor X. You had Captain Carter, who was such a big hit from the What If show.
Well, so much of this is seeded around these concepts in What If. So that's a great nod that whether or not what you're watching in What If. But this whole idea of canon or non-canon, and Star Wars has its same issues of legacy versus, there's someone whose job you're aware of the job of someone who is like the holocron supervisor for Star Wars.
Which must be a pretty goddamn tough job.
I mean, Marvel just had Mark Grunwald while he was around, and that was it.
The toughest jobs, really, at the moment.
Well, I felt it. Frankly, I'd have rather it had been a council of wise ones and hadn't touched on that. I felt it detracted from it being a Doctor Strange film.
I think, yes, that was the moment where it becomes the fan service stuff. And it's so weird with No Way Home, because I think that No Way Home, to its detriment, was the film that gave fans everything they wanted. And then this, I think, was the film that gave you everything you needed.
Yeah.
But that was the moment it dipped into kind of the fan servicey kind of stuff. However, I still enjoyed it. And I still enjoyed that moment.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that moment a lot more than I did, seeing, Tobey Maguire return to acting. And I feel it worked really well. And I was quite surprised coming away from this film how I felt about it and how much I enjoyed it. I mean, the performances were terrific. I like Xochitl Gomez as America Chavez, again, a character I'm not really that familiar with.
I thought the character. I think the acting was fine. I did feel that there was little development with some characters, particularly Christine and hers. I feel they did pretty much just run and snide, and that was it.
Yeah, and it seems a shame with such a good actress as Rachel McAdams to be seemingly saying goodbye to her character in this film. And not having had her feature in any of the wider Marvel universe. I think there is an opportunity in those really big films, such as Endgame and Infinity War, to even if you have one tiny scene or half a scene that features, Christine.
Well, I mean,
or any of them, or Natalie Portman, or any of them, you'd have been absolutely fine to do that, and the audience would have accepted it.
Yeah, but let's also have a look at the fact that you're sitting around moping about your ex-girlfriend while walking down the street, then Charlize Theron turns up. I'm not gonna have much sympathy for you.
Yeah. Very true, and of course that's the big thing, So Charlize Theron apparently going to be playing Clea in future installments, and she seems to be popping up in a lot of big branded superhero stuff, because she also pops up in The Boys as a sort of meta cameo in the current series. Sorry if I'm ruining that for anybody, but yeah, she seems to be dropping into a lot of kind of superhero stuff. And it's interesting that these people, as these actors, as they move through their careers, they're finding a lot of this kind of later stage, saying nothing about her age or the fact that she looks a hell of a lot better at her age than I ever will at mine,
I want to add one little thing there, because and it's specifically about being told that she was too old for Furiosa.
Really? I didn't know that. Because definitely not.
So the Furiosa spin-off, they feel that they really needed to get a younger actress.
Yeah, of course. And who is the younger actress? Is it Anya Taylor-Joy?
I have no idea, but I'm linking it myself. I'm not Hollywood Tatler.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
But like, you tell me, and I was Charlize Theron, that I'm too old for this role, then I'm going to do every AAA action film within the next 3 years.
Yeah,
just as a point. Just as a point.
Yeah, and a terrific actor. Terrific.
Yeah. It's just because we got onto that little subject, that's why I wanted to chip that in. And I do think that actually, while we're on the subject of age, is one of the selling points of Doctor Strange as a character now. He's, as you said, he's the avuncular character from the first range.
They've very quickly moved him into this nice sort of, he's the arrogant dad or arrogant uncle. He replaces Tony Stark, and also it then sets an interesting stall for the Marvel universe going forward, because if we look at Tony Stark's tech being the governing force of the Infinity era, now we have to look at Doctor Strange's magic being the governing force of this new era, whatever that's
Well,
going to be.
I think you're
The
right, but it's
cosmic
going to be
era,
broader.
maybe.
It's broader than that. Between the Eternals, with the sort of, I think it's been officially noted as a Blade cameo.
Yeah.
The growth of the Darkhold of supernatural realms.
Yeah.
And the impact of Thanos' event now being a massive beacon of Earth is the only way to really go. This is also because we're looking at a man who has actually corrupted himself by the end of the film.
Yeah, and we don't know where that's going to go because he has the kind of...
He's a much grayer character than Tony Stark, because I think sometimes it's very easy to just genuinely, and I know there's been various amalgam comics of them, right down to the facial hair, you know, of Tony Stark, Scientist Supreme, you know, What If, yeah, all those little stories. But the character of Stephen Strange isn't so. Tony Stark is an idealist, he's a futurist, and he's someone who's always had a sense of vision. Whereas Doctor Strange, as a surgeon, is much more clinical about dealing with the situation as it happens. He's not an architect. Tony Stark was an architect trying to build for a generation the rights and wrongs of it.
Yeah.
Stephen Strange will do whatever he deems necessary at that moment in time for the rights or wrongs of it.
As you point out, is very much considered a surgical trait.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, it's a fascinating way to look at it, Rob, and one I hadn't thought about, actually.
He does what's, I mean, this is the bit at the end, because at the beginning of the film, Stephen, let's call him Stephen 2, is going to do what our Stephen refused to, which is just kill her and take her powers, because it's the only way to make this happen.
Absolutely, and I think that is, yeah, as you say, that is the difference. He's not willing to sacrifice those sort of young lives. As much as
so that the avuncular thing's there, but it's not, you know, he hasn't had a kid for over the last 5 years. He's actually even more displaced anyway, because he was one of the ones who evaporated. That conversation he has doesn't get enough weight when he's there at her wedding, when the guy's going, yeah, so my brother came, so how do you why do you get to make the call?
Yeah,
he gets to make the call because he was the one who was there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always feel like when you look at Spider-Man as a character, or Peter Parker as a character in this iteration, Tony was the one that lost him.
Yeah.
But Stephen was the one that found him. Do you know what I mean? And I know that sounds a bit pat, maybe, and a bit kind of Hallmark card, but I think that is it. On a larger scale, I think that is it. And in doing that, both those characters find themselves.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of moves that theme on a bit, really. And you know, I think at the point where
then he goes off to Ibiza with his hot new girlfriend.
Yeah. At the point, we hope, at the point where going into this film, he's kind of lost all those people in Infinity War. All right, yeah, everyone came back and all that.
Yeah, but the connections, 5 years of relationships, you don't just see people after 5 years.
No. So they're all gone, and then he comes back and he loses his sort of one true love. Yeah, she's gone. I can see why he kind of fights then so hard to protect America, because it's just like, actually, no more loss. Like, no more loss. I'm gonna, and there is a certain amount of Strangian arrogance in that, and there is a certain amount of, there is an.
But I think, to be honest, when you're working on those stakes, No hero wins a battle, with the exception of Peter Parker going, "I'll give it a go."
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Very true.
Oh, maybe if I do some Pilates. I'll see you later. Oh, take out the Scarlet Witch, but I'm a bit tired. I need a biscuit. That's
I mean,
not...
I'm very much so. As we put this out,
Yeah.
we're hopefully on should all go to plan, which I certainly hope it does. We're on the 22nd of June, and the movie has just dropped on Disney Plus. I am really excited about getting the opportunity to watch it again, even though it's a film I only saw a month ago.
Yeah.
Or just over a month ago, which is very rare.
I saw it on my birthday, so it's opening Friday, so that was May the 6th.
Right. Yeah, I think I went to see like opening day, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, as I do with all the Marvel movies, I try and see them as early as possible, principally because we've got to do the podcast and things like that.
Yeah. Showbiz.
Indeed. But yeah, like overall, my feeling on the film is, yeah, great. More of this.
I really enjoyed it. I liked the classic nods. It just made me want to watch Army of Darkness as soon as I got home.
It's one thing we should point out. Well, actually, I mean, we're not pointing out because hopefully, if you're watching this, you've watched the movie.
I think you'd have. Yeah, come on.
It is pretty grim.
It is. It's very visceral. This is a tail end. We did just talk about in a previous pod about Jurassic World. This is one where I'd be very cautious about a child's sensitivity.
Yes.
12 is such a nebulous age, and I just want to talk a bit about the 12A because it was something with Mark Commode was talking about it now. People, I'm just saying this more because I know there's a lot of people get the things confused. Batman was the first 12, and you had to be a minimum age of 12 to see Batman.
That's right.
Spider-Man was the first film that was a 12A. Now, what that meant was you could go under 12 if you're accompanied by an adult. PG means a 10 or 11-year-old can go to a cinema on their own. But personally, I would still be calling other services because what is a 10-year-old doing on its own in the cinema? Right. But that's the general gist. Yeah. Stick to the issue. And apparently the BBFC in some of the meetings that Mark Commode cited, yes, they did it. They knew that people would take children that were a bit too young, but they never counted on the proportion.
Yeah.
And if they had, they wouldn't have brought in the 12A.
What do you think they would have gone with? Kept it at 15? And
I think they would have gone with 12. The 12 would have still existed. I think this film would have been a 12, end of, because it's so supernatural. At least there's the key to the BBFC is whether or not something can be replicated.
Right. Yes, that's a good point to make.
That's the key point. That's why Paddington is because a child could get into a fridge. A child is not going to get a copy of the Darkhold.
Yeah.
There's little in terms of the things we normally see with dark magic of that one would worry about a child actually being able to do self-harm and things like that.
There's no animal sacrifice. Or,
exactly. You know. So I think this would have personally been a 12, but I'm bringing it up because someone could take a 10 or 11-year-old to it. Now, my nephew, I'll always cite my nephews and nieces because I think it's important. My nephew is 12. I'd be quite happy for him to see this film. I think his understanding is there, and I know his grounding. Yeah. My niece, who's 9, I'd be very curious about it because on a personal level, it's not so much about repetition, but she's able to create so much within her own imagination that I wouldn't be that comfortable with her as a 9 or 10-year-old seeing it. And I think that's why I bring it up with this. I would take her to go and see Jurassic World, because that's more action. There's none of that fear element. But I don't know if I would take, and I say that because there are 2 films that are 12A.
Yeah, I think I would be troubled by people taking young children into this. Again, I think I saw it early in the morning, so there was no question of that, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd be quite troubled. It is a dark film. It is kind of Marvel's horror film.
Yeah. I mean, this is the Rosemary's Baby of it.
Yeah, totally. And you do see some pretty grim stuff. I mean, the fate that befalls the Illuminati, it was,
there's
nasty stuff.
The hysteria element that Raimi can bring,
as
well as the cacophony, the sort of musical, that hyper energy that he brings to those moments. Excuse me. Let's say that.
Yeah, I mean,
the hyper energy he brings to those moments.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, the only other filmmaker I think who could do it now, as well in a similar style, would be Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
And we know, his history of Marvel has been a bit checkered, which is a shame. But I think they should probably kind of make that right and get him on board for something at some point, because I think he's another one who understands how to move between scenes and sequences.
I'd say so. Incidentally, if you haven't seen Belfast, have you seen Belfast?
I have not yet. I have not.
There's a great Marvel Easter egg where, I mean, it's basically Kenneth.
Yeah.
The idea is it's his biography in a very, my own folk. I was saying that as Scottish films build you, but where he's just sitting there reading a Thor comic.
Ah, nice.
And you go, yeah,
which apparently he did do.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he read them all though, and it's the fact that he just goes with this very iconic Thor.
I like that.
Odds. But I do think that from interviews alone, like I said, I try not to get in the industry. There has been a move. There is a distinct move between Marvel being Marvel Studio. This is how you make a Marvel film. The Marvel blueprint to a degree with Iron Man, and very much the post-Gunn era, which Edgar Wright kind of falls into. So there has been that more move of let them do what they're going to do. Scott Derrickson's new film, The Black Phone, looks much darker than what this was.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think he's someone who was really probably would have turned in something, maybe not as not have the same verisimilitude, but would have handed in a much more intense The Oath, probably more mono-universal, Exorcist, Doctor Strange film.
And you've got to wonder if the change to the multiverse stuff is what precipitated his departure. That wouldn't surprise me, although I understand it was an amicable. I mean, they're never going to say it's not.
Yeah, I mean that elements of it. I mean, I try not to get too like my comment on Charlie's Theron was very specific on that. I mean, I'm here first and foremost as a spectator.
Sure.
But I do think Marvel is, as a studio, realizing that diversity has to be as much behind the camera as it is in front of it in order for there to be a creative flow coming in for the next 10 years.
And it's interesting that diversity also extends kind of to older
that's it.
Older males as well. It's not just.
I think there is this thing I mentioned. Why I mentioned whose era is your Star Wars is one that I think works the most accessibly because we are post 40, we are 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah,
there is an era of probably barely classifying as millennials. When you think about it, whose first films were going to be Phantom Menace to Revenge of the Sith. And there's the Generation Z of The Force Awakens. And I think Marvel, being that it is now, it's more of a milieu, and you have a multiverse, is going to be what is going to appeal not just to get in. I mean, it's not trying to Marigold Hotel older viewers. It's just that as we age, our experiences and perspectives are informed by age.
Yeah.
Who is there to represent us in terms of a circumstance or a situation? You can't just continually churn out 16 to 25-year-olds, because then it's going to end up just being a bit like you're just going to end up with Saved by the Bell, the new class.
Yeah. Well, and also it's something that extends into comics with the constant new number ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, I mean that is something. I mean, I've heard Ms. Marvel has done really well in terms of Disney ratings and so on. But as you mentioned, the number ones, my understanding is as a character, it was selling really well, but the perpetual number ones diminished the sales of that comic.
It's probably really possible, and certainly something I can pick up with Liz on next week's Miss Marvel show.
Yeah.
But and she will probably know better than I if that was the case. Because as with all things Marvel comics, I completely bend to Liz's knowledge. You know, I very much kind of surf through Marvel where Liz is kind of swimming in it.
So well, I mean, let's face it. Liz is very much the Galactus, the Galactic Gal. I think there is a character. It's a female version of Galactus called Galactic Gal, and she's like the Galactic Gal of Marvel.
Yeah, she certainly knows her stuff, and
you know, I'm more the Legion of Substitute Heroes. When the other line's busy, you call this guy.
And I am Peter Porker, Spider.
Yeah, I am Spider-Ham. I am Spider-Ham. That's what it's red and blue's from.
Before we go, I did just want to make a quick recommendation for something that features Doctor Strange. That is an excellent book if you want to grab it and can kind of be read. It's got some of the sort of background source material in as well, and that's The Defenders by Al Ewing and Javier Rodriguez.
Oh yeah.
And lettered by Joe Caramagna. And also Caramagna, rather, I should say, and features some art by Alvaro Lopez on issue 1. That was terrific. If you get the chance, do look at that. And in fact, you can find the complete set on the Comic Crush now on the web store in the sort of new this week section. So do check that out, because that was a great comic, and one of the better Marvel ones that I've read in a long while.
Can I chip in with the Doctor Strange section versus the Darkhold?
Yeah,
and a lot of his Doctor Strange versus Dracula's, a lot of the Gene Colan stuff.
Really
great.
Which I think would probably, if collected, will currently be in the Epic collections.
Yeah, I think they'd be in the Epics now. I know that they've collected the Darkhold Scarlet Witch Doctor Strange story from then. The Oath is very good as well as
the Oath is great, story. And I think that's more the due. First.
Yeah,
I think that's due for a reissue.
I'd imagine so, because there's a lot of elements there in the first film. I'd also recommend you do not see the TV movie.
There's a morbid curiosity.
I saw the TV movie as an 11-year-old. It was available for rental in my corner shop.
Right.
He wore the real costume for about 10 minutes. Morgan Le Fay makes it for him, and you think, wow, right, this is the origin story. And then they got rid of it and gave him a purple leotard. And then I told Liz about it, and she still didn't recognize him and still lost that comic book quiz to another comic book shop. Despite the fact that I sent her the photo the question
that we lost on, wasn't that one of what was Stan Lee's first cameo? Which wasn't that. It was
Trial of the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, Trial of the Incredible Hulk. You're absolutely right. And I remember I did say that at the time, and everyone looked at me like I was an idiot. And I'm just like, nope, it was it's got to be one of the Marvel TV movies.
Yeah.
But hey.
Technically, wouldn't it actually be that he was his own voice on those? Hi, folks, Stan Lee here.
Yeah. True believers.
Hey, true believers.
I miss kind of seeing Stan Lee pop up.
he showed how you sell stuff, though.
Yeah.
There's a certain
Well,
he made that subculture House of Mouse replicated it. A lot of brands now are trying to do what him, Dennis O'Neil, and even the Meanwhiles of DC did, which was make these things a fan club with that style.
Yes, I think you're right. There is an element to that.
Yeah.
Come join us.
Yeah.
You know. Okay. I don't have much more to go on this. I feel content that we've kind of really.
I think we've covered the main thematics that we were going to,
and also this is not how I expected it to go, because sometimes we can talk about scenes or individual things, but I think I've really enjoyed this because we got into those thematics and because we get onto the wider meanings. And hopefully this will be a nice companion for anyone who's watched the film. As I said at the beginning, you can follow the Comic Crush at the Comic Crush. You can follow Rob Deb at Rob Deb. On Twitter, on Instagram at the Comic Crush and at Rob K Deb, and you can find us both on Facebook. For me, it's the Comic Crush. For Rob, it's his name. You can find him there. ROB. Rob, it has been great. My chair's just collapsed, as you might have guessed.
I heard that. I thought that was your brunch. Absolute pleasure, Paul.
I can only hope I managed to carry that off with style and panache.
May I go to the bathroom?
Yeah, you certainly can. Right. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Follow the Comic Crush, catch the website, do all that, help keep us going. It's been lovely to see you. Do subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening, for those of you who are tuning in on the podcast. And goodbye.